Okay, so I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you study what you're doing, you're HR manager and consultant. So maybe you can just start off by telling me like what does it exactly involve and what do you like about it and what do you dislike about it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So what it involves, so basically my HR consultancy, we do a few different things. So as an HR manager for, say, for example, for one of our clients that's a small business that doesn't have any HR, we do the full remit of HR support for them.
Okay.
So if they need a new person in their team, then we'll help them figure out what that role looks like and then recruit the position.
Okay.
And then we'll help them onboard the employee. So it's, going through that whole employee life cycle. So I'll then help them onboard the employee, have good performance conversations from the very start. So managing them in the probation process. And I'll also do feedback sessions with the employee to make sure that they're having a good onboarding experience.
Okay.
Then from there, there'll be a bit of support around performance review time, so making sure that they're having quality feedback conversations. If there are any issues identified, then you can go into performance management support. And I guess from there, there's the performance management in terms of managing underperforming employees.
Okay.
So you'll go through a very thorough process with an employee who's underperforming to try and give them coaching, development, identify what is leading to them to not be performing to their standard, and then they'll either come back up to the expectations of that position, or you'll need to support the manager to exit them from the business.
Oh, so that's the one part you probably don't like about it.
It's really challenging. Yeah, it's really difficult, and I think when it comes to performance, when it's a capability thing that they're struggling with the requirements of the role, but they've got the right attitude, that makes it really difficult if they're just not getting it. So I guess over my time I've learned a few different tools that I like to apply to help the individual identify what it is that's impairing them, and then give them coaching or development to help them. When it's an attitude factor, it's a little bit different because sometimes it can be like misconduct.
Oh wow! And then is it that bad when you have to execute them then, or is it?
I've never had to terminate someone like immediately for misconduct. But sometimes when it's reoccurring, then you'll have to proceed to a.
Okay. So on to the next question.
Yeah.
What are the most important knowledge and skills that you apply regularly in your current position?
Okay. Employment law, I would say. You definitely have to be across the employment, the Fair Work Act. The Fair Work Act, like the Fair Work Ombudsman website, is my best friend.
Is it hard to navigate that? Or?
Fair Work is quite easy to understand once you grasp it. I find it's replaced a previous system that I think was a lot more challenging to understand. So it is really comprehensive, and I find it quite. I'm really comfortable with it. So the awards are a little bit more tricky. Some of them are they're not written, like they're a little bit still written in that legal terminology. And you kind of have to read the whole award in case it's like, subject to this clause. But again, once you understand a few different awards, they do have a lot of similarities.
So you then, after a while, you just get to know it and you don't have to look back all the time?
Yeah, I'll still have to check if I'm working under a new award, but you do get to know if you're operating in a certain industry, you get to know the legislation, like the award, and Fair Work underwrites everything, but you get to know the awards quite well.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, what was your question?
What is the most important knowledge and skills that you apply regularly in your current position? So do you have any other, or? Yeah,
I would say the other thing would be relationship building. So you have to do a lot of influencing. So building trust with a manager so that you can influence them to understand why something's important, because particularly with underperforming employees. I don't know whether it's my area that I work in. They don't want to deal with it.
They
don't want to have the
them.
difficult conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot of coaching them to have the right people skills.
So a lot of interpersonal skills that you kind of have to
Absolutely.
use.
Yeah.
So how is knowledge of motivation and emotion relevant in your current employment context?
Interesting.
You can think about it.
Yeah, so motivation I think is really important because when you see somebody starting to disengage, you need to understand why. I mean, ideally you don't ever want people to get to that point where they're disengaged. You know, it's ideal situation to have all of your employees thriving in the workplace. But I definitely go back to having the hygiene factors. What is that? Hertzberg's model or something? Hygiene and I can't remember what the other ones are called. But you know, getting those hygiene factors right, like remuneration. Ensuring people are paid on time, getting all their entitlements. But then all of I think the motivational factors might be different for different people. So some people are driven by their salespeople, often driven by financials, so high bonuses. Or then you might have people who are driven by gaining knowledge or building relationships. So then it's working to understand what it is that motivates them and make sure that they're receiving that. And often that will be working with their manager to ensure they're getting that in their role.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the next question, how do you use critical thinking skills in this position, and can you give an example? You can have a think about it.
Okay. Okay, so critical thinking, I'd say one of the, you use it quite regularly because with people and enterprise, it becomes very complex. You have to balance the needs of the organisation with trying to also respond to the needs of the individual, so that can become, people are really complicated sometimes. But an area where I've probably can give you a good example would be, we recently had a client who needed to renew their diversity and inclusion strategy. So I worked on this with my manager, but it was, what we did was we went out and we held employee listening sessions. So we went out to different sites for the organisation, and we asked employees what it was that they liked about working there, how included they felt, what did they feel diversity meant to them, and then in 5 years' time, if we were to be operating at a really inclusive level, what would that look like? What would we need to change? So then we took all of this information. We did about 6 sessions across Australia. And got all of that feedback, and then I put it into different thematics, and then from there built it into what do we need to do to get to a more inclusive level in 5 years' time. So that was then put into a very comprehensive strategy document where it looked at where are we now, what does our workforce data look like, what are our intentions, where do we want to be. So we want more Indigenous people in our population, we want more female representation. This was a cement company, by the way, so they were very male dominated. And we want to connect better with our communities, and then going and researching, well, how do we do that? What are the actions we need to take that? And then going out and sharing that again with employees.
So that's
and
like
getting
reading
their feedback.
papers, kind of, or?
Case studies,
Case studies,
so kind of looking at case studies, looking at best practice, so you can look at like WGEA have you heard of WGEA? The Workplace Gender Equality Agency?
No, I haven't.
They do gender equality research. So looking at different pieces of research, and then also looking at other organisations that have applied best practice, and also suggestions of the employees, and making sure it's realistic as well with the executive team. So
it's a lot of
change the world.
So how often do you have to use like communication skills, and also can you give an example for that as well?
Yes. So communication skills, absolutely every day.
Yeah. Imagine.
Yeah. So I'll give an example. I would say an example would be recruitment. And where I've seen it go wrong is sometimes there's a breakdown in communication from the manager of what exactly they're looking for in the individual. And then even in terms of the individual's expectations of the role. So you have to communicate with them in a way that does make them want to work with your organisation.
So trying to find out more from what they want, or
yeah, trying to find out what they want, what they expect.
yeah.
And also communication in terms of the quality of communication when you're learning about someone's background.
Okay.
So I'd still behaviourally interview people to try and understand about their background, and then move them into the position. But I think when you don't communicate well with candidates, then sometimes you can end up with the wrong person in the wrong role. So you'll bring a person into your business, and then within like the first few months, you realise they're not the right person, and then you have to go back through that whole process again. Yeah,
that sounds difficult.
yeah, but it happens like in
All the
every
time,
area of HR, I'd say. Because you're working with people who are very busy. A lot of managers, they've got a lot. People management is usually just one part of their role. You have to be quite direct with them.
Okay. So, what are the most important professional values applied in your current position?
Professional values. What do you mean by professional values?
So, I'm thinking like chairing a meeting or minuting or something like that, like technical, or arriving on time or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I would say as HR, you need to build credibility with your clients, so your people leaders. You also need to build credibility with employees, so you've got that level of respect from them.
Okay.
And then in my role as a consultant, I also have contact with different stakeholders, so I bring in industry experts and connect them with other clients. So definitely always being on time.
Yeah.
I'm typically early to most meetings.
Okay.
Being ethical.
Yeah.
So making sure that if you don't know something, you say, I don't know, I'll check and I'll come back to you, and not just winging it.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are really busy, so they'll just push to want to make a decision, and I found that's been a big challenge for me to say, no, I need to be really comfortable we're making the right decision.
Yeah, I see.
So what else? Yeah, I'd say being on time to meetings, being ethical, and being having professional communication.
Okay.
Being able to adapt to different levels of people as well.
So you said ethical, being ethical is also very important.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads to the next question, because can you describe an ethical dilemma you faced or experienced in your workplace, and how did you approach it?
Oh, this is so hard.
You can literally have a think about it, or we can go to the next question.
I can tell you. I just hope it isn't like, I feel weird that it's recorded, but that's fine. It's all legal. So this was a really difficult decision for me. So when I was working in mining, there are dump trucks that have you can only weigh under a certain amount of kilos to operate the vehicle.
Yeah.
So we had interviewed this man for a truck operator role, and he was amazing. He was very experienced.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was actually a truck or a particular machine, but get my example. So we interviewed him over the phone because it took like a whole day to get out to this mine site. So we always did phone interviews.
Yeah.
So I do a phone screen, a full comprehensive phone interview with the hiring manager, and then if they were likely to be successful, we'd take them out to the site. So all was going really well with this candidate. We organised for him to go out to site. The minute that he left site, I got a call from the hiring manager saying he's really big. and I was like, oh, okay. And he explained that he was very overweight. So they had kind of touched upon his weight, and he'd said that he actually got terminated from one of the big mining companies because he had reached an excessive weight, and even after comprehensive management, he couldn't retain he could reduce weight but then go back up again, and he just couldn't retain a healthy weight, so he had to keep being taken off work. But he'd worked really hard to work his weight down, and he was 1 kilo under the threshold to be able to operate this truck. So if he gained any more weight, he would have to be taken off the trucks again, and we would be liable to then support him. So based on that, there was a lot of to and fro with the hiring manager and with our legal advisor on whether we can take the risk and hire him, and it was decided that he wouldn't be hired. It was too much of a risk that he would end up gaining another kilo and then wouldn't be able to operate. However, the advisor who gave me the advice that we wouldn't be able to hire said that he didn't want us to disclose this to the candidate because it's a bit risky. He kind of is just within the threshold, so he could try and take us to court or make a claim against us. So I had to call the candidate and explain that we decided to go ahead with someone else. And I'd built a really good relationship with him, and he wanted some feedback, and he said that he'd gone for about 5 different jobs, and he always got to the final stage and then he didn't get it, and he really wanted to know what he was doing wrong. And I didn't tell him.
That breaks my heart.
I know. I went home and I think I cried. It was awful. So the most ethical dilemmas I've had have always been in the hiring process. When something is just not quite right. And you want to just tell the person that
you have to listen to like the manager. I see what you mean.
So that can be difficult.
Shame. It must have been difficult for you.
I really wanted to just tell him. But,
So, wait. What is the thing you wish you learned or practiced more at university level in readiness for the work context you're currently in?
That's a really good question. You know what? I actually think this is going to sound really weird. Social skills.
Really? So like more group work or something like that?
It's almost like navigating the political environment of an organisation. There's really different dynamics when you go into a company. And when you're first out of uni, you don't realise how complex the relationships can be in organisations. So I've worked in certain environments where it's quite hard to be transparent, and I'm a very transparent person. So I guess some sort of training or insight into navigating difficult conversations and difficult relationships, or what? I know it sounds very vague, but
no, I kind of see what you mean. I definitely see what you mean, but like kind of like a course, a whole course. Like
even if it probably needs some sort of experience, like experiential learning, or even. And I guess this is what I really like about psych versus HR, is that you have supervision once, like when you, if you do your master's or in clinical psych, then you still have supervision for those first 2 years of your career.
I see.
Whereas with HR, you just go in there and you've got your manager, but if your manager doesn't take a coaching approach, then you are kind of left figuring out
and
how
that's
to navigate the
then you're not doing your work properly in the beginning at least. Okay, so what extra experience or extracurricular activities do you recommend so that I can go into do your line of work one day? So any like internships or maybe extracurricular activities, I don't know.
Definitely in terms, like I think HR is very much about your experience.
Definitely.
What I did was I did an internship in my penultimate year, and then I picked up a role in HR in my final year as well, and that was probably the best exposure, was having that internship.
Yeah.
Because you get exposure to the work, so.
And then you're more likely to get hired in a graduate position.
Definitely.
Okay. So, what are the most important? I already asked that. What is your background? And I noticed from your LinkedIn profile that you studied like psychology and human resources at UNSW. And was this always your plan? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so was it always my plan to go into HR, or was it
always your plan? And what is your background kind of? Like, where did you come from? And
okay.
Yeah,
more on a whole life level?
Not a whole life level, but more from more of a career level in a way.
Okay.
Like your career, like how did you decide, okay, I want to study psychology and human resources, and have you always wanted to do it?
Okay.
So.
Yeah, okay, so I actually come from a tiny town. This will make sense in a moment.
Yeah.
So of 250 people down in the Snowy Mountains.
Yes.
So I didn't even know that HR was a career that existed.
Yeah.
I've always been really interested in mental health and helping people. So I guess like when I was at high school, I was thinking psychology or law. When I finished psychology, the Snowy Hydro offer traineeships in different business departments to help people work and save before they go off to uni.
Okay.
So I applied for a traineeship and I was placed into the HR team.
Okay.
And I didn't even know what HR was. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I really loved it.
Okay.
So I mainly worked a lot with recruitment support.
Yeah.
And then I just did kind of like little bits of ad hoc support for the team. And got exposed to like what was involved in an HR function. I stayed with them for 18 months and then I decided to go to uni. And I was originally enrolled into psychology at UOW, but I decided I wanted to do psych, and I still wanted to do psych at the time, but I was interested in HR. I was actually thinking probably org psych. So I didn't actually get the marks.
Organizational psychology? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I didn't get the marks to get into a Bachelor of Psych degree, so I ended up going into UNSW in a Bachelor of Arts and then transferring across. And when I talked to the faculty about transferring, they said, you've got experience in HR, why don't you do the BPsych science and do a second major in human resource management? And so I was like, yes, this degree was made for me. So I did them, and in my in my penultimate year, throughout the year I was working with a clinical psych and /org psych organisation. They did like third-party assessments for insurance companies when the employee had a psychological injury.
Okay.
And they also did resilience training. And I saw that it was like really heavy in report writing, and I wasn't really attracted to that. So I ended up thinking I'll go and give HR a go. I've seen kind of what psych can be like. So I went and worked at HSBC. I did a summer internship with them, and that was really fun. They're a great team.
Yeah.
They've got about 25 people in their team back when I was there, and each person, like each leader of each different stream of HR would take me out for coffee and tell me what their career was like and what they did. So it was really nice, and I highly encourage, if in your internship, to grab people and go out for coffee with them and ask them about their career. Because most people who are passionate will also recommend that you do, they'll try and sell it to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I worked at HSBC, and then I ended up having a friend whose mum was an HR manager who had a vacancy for an HR administrator.
That's so convenient.
Yeah, so I went to the interview and I was like, oh. And the manager was just amazing. Like, I just wanted to work for her. I didn't really care about the role. Yeah. So, and that's how I ended up going into HR. So in my last year, I was working in that role, and I negotiated so that I had like 3 10-hour days a week and then 2 days to finish off my studies. So it was busy. It was busy last year, but it was really good because my HR manager used to just pull me into everything that she was doing, and I'd be like a note taker, so I kind of
got a lot of experience.
Yeah, and the other thing, which I don't know what you mean when you reference that you don't know if psych would be right for your personality.
Yeah.
But the thing, I'm really passionate about mental health, but I'm not sure that it would be the right fit for me to be listening to those intense difficulties of day on day.
For me, it just sounds like it could be like very emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm like, I'll be able to do it at all. So, but it's definitely an interesting way to go. But I think you have to be a particular kind of person.
Yeah.
So what type of entry-level position would you recommend for someone at my career stage and with my background? So I guess you've already referenced like what you've done, and so maybe like just like a graduate position and just a normal graduate HR position, or?
I would absolutely recommend an HR grad role.
Yeah.
I didn't do a graduate role.
Yeah.
I went straight into this HR administrator role, and then because I was doing so much work with them across the whole organisation, when I told my manager I was thinking about going and doing a grad role at one of the big banks, she said, "Oh, you're disregarding all of your experience going into a grad role now." So then I kind of continued into an advisor role and then moved into a consultant role.
Yeah, that's true.
But on retrospect, when I was at Evolution Mining, they had a graduate program.
Yeah.
And the HR graduate got moved around to different business units. And when you go into an HR admin role, you don't get that different exposure to the specialist functions. You only really kind of get that generalist exposure, and maybe if there's a project you can go on to it. But I think the benefits of doing a grad role in a big company is that they rotate you to different areas. So you might do one generalist, but then you'll do like OD or industrial relations, and so you can look at generalist versus specialist and see what is most aligned to you.
Yeah.
So it's taken me a lot longer, and I'm still actually working that out now, whether I want to stay generalist, which I most likely will for at least another 2 to 3 years, or whether I want to specialise. And for me, that would be working in organisation development.
Okay, I see. So working with organisations, one organisation individually, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or OD, you can do it on a consulting basis.
Okay.
So do you want to work in consulting rather than internal?
I think I'm wanting to go more into consulting, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, for my position, I'm going to I'm going to have an internship next year, and that's like with the HR organization with psychologists there, and what they do is they're wanting to improve, I think, employers' EQ. Okay. Yeah, to improve like the business and everything, and see if everything. I'm not really sure.
They ask who it's with.
Rochelle Martin.
Oh, I haven't heard of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're quite small, but like I think there's a few of them around the world. So yeah.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what it turns out to be like, and if I really want to go do it.
Yeah.
So on to the next question. So what is specific training and advancement programs are typically required by your company? Are there any trainings, or just more experience? It just seems like from what you've been saying.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's why I went internal HR and I didn't go straight to consulting, because I felt like I needed to build a foundation for myself. And like very long term, I probably will end up consulting once I have children and I've got enough experience behind me. So I feel like I didn't realize you were thinking consulting rather than internal. And I've only really been doing consulting this year. I would say from my current organisation, what I get is my manager will put me into any project that I like. That's so you get exposure.
A lot of exposure.
By seeing how she'll run a project, and then I'll do bits and pieces, and then as you know, if we get more projects in that area, then I'll gradually take over more responsibility.
Okay, I see. Um, so how does your organization utilize communication technology? So do you use any like IT or something like that?
Yeah, so email, absolutely, for everything. We actually have a WhatsApp group as well, so and we've got one for our core team. So while I'm a consultant, I'm still part of the way that our business is structured is we've got a core team that only has 2 consultants on it. The rest is like our CEO, marketing, operations.
I see.
And then all of our other consultants are contractors.
Okay, I see.
So we've got a couple of different WhatsApp groups to keep in touch with our contractors and then keep in touch with each other.
Yeah.
And then we use like heaps of different tools to like Monday.com, which is like a time management, project management tool.
Okay, I see.
You know, like Trello, or you have all your tasks and you can put them into different boards and into a calendar. But that's how we kind of communicate with or make sure that we're all on top of what each other are working on. So I'd say we use it as a communication platform.
Okay.
The email would be still the biggest one. Yeah.
Have you heard of Slack? No, do you use Slack?
No, I don't use Slack. I've heard of it, but I've never used it.
Yeah. The current intern, like I have this intern position, and we use Slack a lot.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just like an app. So what do you wish you had known about this field before you entered it?
How commercial you need to be. So, and especially as a consultant, you will always be dealing, like when somebody's a leader of a business, the bottom line is very important.
Yeah.
And so you need to communicate things when you're managing people situations. It's not, I was very emotive when I started my career, so this is the right thing to do. It's not fair on this person that we're doing this. This is upsetting for them. And I had to really change my language to be a consultant and to not to allow them to make the decision, but to give them the facts on what are the risks and what are the benefits of making this decision, and thinking like a business leader rather than a people person.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people go in to help people, and you've got to realise you need to have a lot of commercial acumen as well.
Okay, I see. So last question. Given the information that you have about my background, so what I do, I'm studying psychology and neuroscience, and like I said originally, I wanted to do clinical psychology.
Yeah.
I think like most people, but I'm currently considering like going into neuroscience or something like marketing analysts as well. So what do you suggest, any other fields to investigate, or
I would say if you're interested in psychology and you're interested in HR, have a look at OrgPsych. And if you go into consulting straight away, I know a lot of consultants will, like I think they might end up being OrgPsychs or might consider doing the training. You don't have to be an OrgPsych, it's just, I think it gives you some more tools. Any other areas? I don't know, I'd have to learn more about why you're considering those areas.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Yeah.